Hey everyone, me Kevin here. In this video, I'm going to break down clips from 4 video interviews that took place today on what the heck is going on with the $2,000 stimulus checks. Quick catch up on what we know, and then let's get right into the videos. First, we know that the UCs, the unanimous consent attempts by Democrats and Republicans today, both failed. Democrats failed to get their $2,000 stimulus check amendment, and Republicans failed to get their government funding scrutinizing amendment through. Kevin McCarthy and Pelosi were not there to negotiate this, but guess what? They weren't there because both of them knew these measures were going to fail. Instead, they simply pushed for these unanimous consent measures to get voted on, knowing the other side would reject them, so that way they could make fun of each other in the media over this weekend. That's what these politicians do. They set the other person up on purpose, knowing that they'll be able to use it as political leveraging in the media. That's what they do. If Congress had any real cojones, they would have on Tuesday night said, Congress, you got 24 hours, get your butt back, we got to deal with Trump's demand. They could have all flown back Wednesday night and dealt with the problem, voted on it then. But no, now we're dangling the carrot to see what happens on Monday. We also know that Donald Trump has the bill ready to sign at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And we do know that on Saturday, 12 million Americans lose unemployment benefits, and on January 4th, up to 19 million individuals, or about 8 million families, could be evicted. Now, we realize that the House plans to vote on 3 issues on Monday, but we still have no idea what the Senate is going to do coming next week. We have no schedule and no plans. All we know is the House is going to try to kick some things over to the Senate so the House could again make a media presentation and say, well, look what we did. It's good old Mitch who's waiting again, which we still have not heard from Mitch. Anyway, the House on Monday will issue a continuing resolution, very likely, we're not sure how long, to keep the government from shutting down. Trump will have to sign that. And I've had a lot of questions about this, like, isn't Trump going to have to sign this? The answer is yes, but Trump's going to sign this, because a continuing resolution gives him leverage. It just buys him more time. The last thing he wants is people saying, Trump's the reason the government's shut down. He's going to sign a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. That won't be an issue. The veto override on the NDAA and the vote on the $2,000 stimulus checks, the in-person votes that occur on Monday, that is going to be interesting. And that is going to put Republicans and Democrats on record in terms of actually supporting what America needs right now or voting against it. Now, again, all of this voting here, this is scheduled for Monday. It's going to be scheduled for 3 p.m. on Monday, Eastern Standard Time, and this is going to be critical. We'll get to feel out to see how progress is going. But for now, let's take a look at 4 different video clips. Now, these are from various different sources. We've got CNN, we've got Bloomberg, we've got CNBC, so I'm not picking a certain news station for any reason. I just want to show you the actual content. So, as such, first, we are going to start to find out what is the biggest problem right now in Congress. And to do that, yes, we are looking at CNN, then we'll go to the other sources. Let's find out the biggest problem.
That's the issue right now. That's the biggest problem that I've heard repeatedly from lawmakers and their top aides who are very frustrated at this moment is they don't feel like there's anything they can do. You take how long it actually took for them to reach agreement on COVID relief. Almost 8 months. It's been just a disastrous effort for so many weeks at a time that never went anywhere. They finally figured out a way to thread the needle. And while it's not enough for many people, it's too much for some people, it was enough to get plenty of votes in both the House and the Senate. Reopening the package simply isn't an option based on what I'm being told right now. And so Congress, for all of its capability, for the intelligence of its staff members, for what it can do legislatively, is kind of in a bind right now. Everybody, Wolf, really is in wait-and-see mode, and perhaps wait and see, will they have to override a veto? Perhaps wait and see, will they have to try and keep the government open against the president's wishes? But mostly just hoping and praying, and those are the words I keep hearing from multiple aides on both sides of the aisle. It's hope and pray time right now that the president decides once he receives that bill off that airplane later tonight, he actually decides to sign it at some point over the course of the next couple days.
See, this is very interesting because some people are actually rumoring that Donald Trump might try to use this package that he now has as maybe it's going to be the Christmas gift from the Trumps. You know what? We're just going to put our differences aside. We made our case. He got his fundraising emails out. He got his mission accomplished. Hey, you know what? We only lost 2 days. Trump comes out Christmas Day. You know what? Christmas present to everybody. We're going to go ahead and sign this. And you know what? I'm going to separately instruct Congress to negotiate the next stimulus package. And maybe Donald Trump takes a method like that. That might be very optimistic. But I don't like the alternative right now. Because earlier today, we heard the same thing from Roy Blunt, where they're saying, look, the alternatives of basically going back into this bill and renegotiating, very bad. Right now, the best thing that can happen is Donald Trump signs that bill. Let's hear a little bit more here. And what's fascinating is this individual right here is going to tell us about what happens with Donald Trump when he goes to Mar-a-Lago. This is interesting. Listen to this.
Jeremy, who has the president's ear now that he's down at his residence at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach? Is there anyone left who can reason with the president?
Well, I don't know about people who can reason with the president, but there certainly will be a lot of people in the president's ear as he spends the holidays here at his resort at Mar-a-Lago. This is the place where the president's advisors, White House advisors, get the most nervous. And that is because the president is around so many people, so many of his acquaintances and friends from the Palm Beach area, as well as his political allies who come down here when he is here as well in order to try and bend his ear and influence his decision making. And
I'm going to pause there just to explain really quick. What they're suggesting here, or this individual is suggesting here, is that when Donald Trump goes to his golf club, he is away from the confines of the White House. Remember that in the confines of the White House, usually the aides, the White House aides, try to keep Donald Trump on a leash, whether that's Mnuchin or Meadows. Their goal is to try to do whatever they can to keep Donald Trump controlled. This is relatively similar to what happened about a week and a half ago, or potentially 2 weeks ago at this point, when Donald Trump said, I want $2,000 stimulus checks, and the White House said, no, that's going to blow up negotiations. That's the kind of corralling he gets at the White House. At Mar-a-Lago, it's different. There are a lot of wealthy club, goers and individuals who have memberships at Mar-a-Lago that may have golf meetings with Trump, and maybe we'll get more business executive types or lobbyists having direct access to Trump, potentially influencing Trump to go ahead and sign the bill. Be interesting. Certainly could go both ways. Let's now leave CNN before it gets too political, because oftentimes they could start okay and then you go right into the bias tangent. So we're going to go ahead and leave CNN. We're going to jump on over to CNBC, and we're going to cut right into a question here about the $2,000 stimulus checks. Let's go.
Should Pelosi be pushing the $2,000 price tag now?
Well, the president said, listen, the direct checks to people, which is critical, something that Tom and I have supported. If from my perspective, if they want to add more to make the president happy, I've always been for giving out more resources to be helpful to people right now who are in a tough time. So if we can help with that, terrific. But keep in mind, we worked so hard to bring this package together to get Democrats and Republicans on board. So I think we should pass this piece. We should get this piece of legislation signed, and then we should add more to it. And I'm happy we're introducing that today. And if the president signs it, that's terrific. But it doesn't make sense to blow the whole thing up and hurt people and undermine all the other pieces of this legislation, which are so critical.
Right.
It's so true. I mean, at least get this done. Let's work on the next piece after. All right, so that's the Democrat. He takes the expected position. Look, if Trump wants more checks, let's put more checks in. Great. Y'all know I'm for extra $2,000 checks. I think we should do monthly $2,000 checks. My opinion doesn't matter, though. Instead, let's listen to what the Republican of the Problem Solvers Caucus group says. This is fascinating because he's going to let us know what some possible counteroffers could be on the stimulus package. Then we're going to get into what we hear from some folks regarding these stimulus checks, especially on Bloomberg, so stay tuned for that. Let's go listen to this piece.
But the bottom line is the $2,000 issue is separate and distinct from where we found the common ground in the COVID relief bill with $600, the unemployment of $300 being increased. Now, if you put the $2,000 in there, are you going to go back to the unemployment issue that got the compromise done and say, well, we're giving cash of $2,000? Well, now I'll hear my members, I know colleagues are going to say, reduce that to zero, because why should you give them $300 additional a week in unemployment when they're getting $2,000 cash payments? And then this whole thing starts to unravel. We need.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is a very good argument there. Is, hey, if we're going to do larger $2,000 stimulus checks, let's go cut unemployment as a potential Republican counter. That's dangerous because, as he said, then you start taking the whole bill apart, because then you're going to go back to Democrats and they're going to, no, you're not touching unemployment. Well, we're just doing what your president said.
Deliver this now to the American people. That's why it's so critical. We're going to get this done, and we're not stopping in the Problem Solvers Caucus, because this is what we do. We put people first and don't play the political theater.
But I'm just wondering, Congressman Reed, what you think about the position that the president has put you in. He's put your party in a bit of a box, hasn't he?
Well, obviously, that is a frustration that I think many of my colleagues and myself, working with the president, I was one of the first 8 to endorse the president. And I will tell you, When you raise these issues at the last minute like this, it's very concerning. But I understand the frustration of the president. I understand this presentation, but blindsiding folks and doing this at the last second, to me, is not conducive, because the American people are the ones who lose in this fight. The American people, and this is where I speak to the president right now, the American people, millions of American people, we negotiated this. They're waiting for this relief. There were people being hired on Monday because they're waiting on the Paycheck Protection Program. Tens of thousands of people are going back to work. I implore the president, please think of those people, and I encourage him, sign this COVID relief bill. I understand your concern about the foreign aid. I totally appreciate that. But the people that we negotiate for this $900 billion are waiting for this relief, and it can be done. It can be done with a stroke of your pen, and you have the power to get it done.
Wow, that was really powerful. Honestly, I have to say that is one of the reasons I love the Problem Solvers Caucus, because even though this is a Republican, look at how the way he presented his argument. He said, hey, I get it, totally get it. Maybe we do need to send bigger checks, but then the problem is we're going to get Republicans going, well, then we should unwhittle unemployment, and then the whole bill is going to fall apart. Why don't we just get this bill done now? Because we do have people waiting for the Paycheck Protection Program. We do have people lining up jobs and work for PPP funding that's supposed to come through, but is now getting delayed because we're not signing something that we all agreed on. Not a bad argument here. Not a bad counteroffer. It's not good for getting the $2,000 checks, but, and I hate being the one to say it, but 600 is better than zero, because if we don't get the 2,000 and we don't get the 600, we're going to be waiting until the end of January or even February, which honestly is when we should be talking about the next package, not this one. All right, let's keep moving on.
Congressman Gottheimer, I mean, if you guys are focused on the solution here, game this out for me. What does this look like over the coming days then? Is this going to be a situation where it makes the most sense to break these two pieces of this omnibus bill apart and work on them separately? Are we going to need a continuing resolution to make sure the government doesn't shut down next week?
Well, as you just pointed out, if he doesn't sign this bill, which is going to his desk, the government will shut down on the 28th. Which throws a whole nother series of problems for veterans and seniors and getting people's medication. That's a whole nother problem. So what I'd encourage is sign this bill, get this bill passed. It's something we agreed upon. His representatives were at the table. Don't deliver a giant lump of coal in people's stockings on Christmas when they're desperately in need. For our families and our businesses and our communities, get that done. Let's get the vaccines out to people. And if he wants to separately vote up and down, which I'm happy to do, on more resources to people, more stimulus checks, I think that'd be great. I would support that. Keep it separate, but don't blow everything up. And I think how this plays out, I'm hoping that, as Tom just said, that he signs the piece of legislation. We can have a separate debate on more checks and get those dollars out. In terms of the foreign aid pieces that he's complaining about, those were, again, all part of his budget. So we passed that all together. That was a separate piece of legislation, part of the same package we voted on. But it's passed. It's signed. It will, and let's just sign it all, get it done, and help people at Christmas time here. It makes no sense to blow this all up and to shut the government down here.
This Problem Solvers Caucus, I'll tell you, good. They are good. And I do want to, I gave quotes from Senator Roy Blunt earlier today. We gave multiple quotes about how there aren't the votes in the Senate to get the $2,000 checks, that we should just get this deal done. This is actually the audio of the way this came across. I figured I'd just play this. It's 10 seconds long.
The best way out of this is for the president to sign the bill, and I still hope that's what he decided. It took a long time to get to where we are. I think reopening that bill would be a mistake.
When you say
it's kind of interesting. It's interesting to see the sort of laughter that was going on while Roy Blunt was saying, you know, the way out of this is, and it's almost because the reporters must be losing their minds with all the left and right jigger-jagger that's going on. It's incredible. We're going to jump over to this interview. This is a CNBC interview on the left, the CNBC correspondent, with the chief editor of Politico on these particular issues. And she's going to ask, hey, like, who's going to say no to $2,000 stimulus checks? I mean, aren't people getting put on record here? It's an interesting response. Let's hear it.
Here she is saying, okay, you want $2,000, I'll give you $2,000. Who in their right mind at this point is going to say no to that if they have to be on the record voting no?
No, most Republicans in the Senate are going to say no to it. I mean, Pelosi essentially has already done this. The effort today to get unanimous consent for $2,000 stimulus payments, which was blocked, and now on Monday she will do it again, hopefully hoping to get a full roll call vote. The Democrats simply want to be fully on record and having voted in favor of this larger number for stimulus checks. They've always been for bigger direct payments.
I'm going to say I hate that they do this because the Democrats are trying to get a vote done so they can power through the democratic process with Democrats and then go, we did our job. We did our job. Okay. It's on Mitch. If Mitch wants to take it up, it's there. And then they walk away from the negotiating table because they're like, we're done. It's there if you want it. That's how everything else failed in the past. They got to have a deal before they vote. And so it's interesting hearing him say, look, like, who's going to vote against this? The Republicans in the Senate. We heard Roy Blunt say that. You know, here's a daily expert on this saying the same thing.
Have been since the spring when they passed their next COVID stimulus bill. So that puts pressure on some Republicans. But for the most part, Republicans, particularly in the Senate, where such a bill out of the House would die, don't want that price tag to go up from $900 billion. Don't believe that we should go from $600 stimulus checks to $1,200 or $2,000 or whatever the number is, that people don't need it necessarily. And they would rather not have a big of a bill. So it's not a huge problem for them to just say no to that.
A lot of people on Main Street, a lot of economists think this is a drop in the bucket for what this economy needs.
Yep.
The chances of getting another big stimulus pass increase greatly if the Democrats get control of the Senate. That could happen if you have a couple Democrats win the Senate races in Georgia. How does this whole conflict play into what's laying in wait in Georgia? How does this hang in the balance?
Yeah, it's really interesting and somewhat complicated politics in the Georgia special elections for the Senate, because plenty of Georgians, Republicans included, would like to see these larger checks. The Republican candidates there are not necessarily in favor of them, but it puts them in an awkward position, particularly now that Trump is on record saying he wants bigger stimulus checks. But the larger picture is, you know, if Democrats win both of those races, Biden comes into office with both the House and the Senate in Democratic control, he will do another large stimulus, even if this goes through, another $1 trillion or $2 trillion. If he doesn't get that and Mitch McConnell is in charge of the Senate, he's not going to get that. So this will be the last train leaving the station, which is why it's even more important to the incoming Biden administration that this get done and help the economy so it doesn't tank as he's about to take office.
That's interesting because we have seen Mitch McConnell say he's open to doing another bill in the future, but that particular expert is suggesting, no, look, we need to get this done. This might be the last train leaving the station unless the Democrats sweep in Georgia. And the candidates running there might not be for these $2,000 stimulus checks. So given that tonight is Christmas Eve, let's end off with a little bit of optimism. So far we've had probably some realistic discussions. We've got frustrations going on. We know there's confusion regarding Georgia. We know Biden wants the stimulus done. We know Congress wants the stimulus done. Trump wants the larger checks. Are we going to get them? Let's get a little bit of optimism here and see what the bottom line outcome of this might be. Let's listen in from Bloomberg.
Who really need the Paycheck Protection Program to revive up again and start helping those small businesses who've really been hit the hardest by the pandemic. We have the funding deadline on Monday, and right now my expectation is that they're putting in the Senate trying to figure out where they want to go and whether or not they want to cut a deal on the stimulus checks, if they'll stay stay firm on $600 or want to make other changes. But those negotiations are all going on right now. I think the main thing for your viewers to know is that I still think a deal is likely in the near term. This is just part of the process. And, you know, somebody's worked on a lot of bills over the years. You know, this doesn't totally surprise me that we're at the end of the year and there's a lot of haggling going on over this bill. That's a pretty common outcome in Washington. Certainly going over the Christmas holiday we haven't done that in a while, but still the overall process is still the same, that last minute negotiations to finalize a really important bill. So that's pretty standard in Washington. So I remain optimistic.
Now, this is interesting. That's somebody who used to work with Trump in the White House on legislation, who recognizes, hey, this is how stuff's done in Washington. Last-minute changes, last-minute pressures to see who's going to crack, so that way everybody feels like they got the absolute best out of the other side. I mean, think about it this way. If Mitch McConnell comes out and says, fine, we'll do $1,200 checks again, Trump might go, okay, I'll go with that. Pelosi might go, okay, I'll go with that. Boom. Trump looks like the hero who just gave everybody double-sized stimulus checks. Maybe not 2,000, but it's also a very Trumpian negotiating strategy to come out with a high ball. Because when you go high, you might actually encourage magnetically to get the negotiation move closer to where your starting point is. When you set that starting point in a negotiation, you oftentimes can actually manipulate the negotiation to go in your favor. Quick example with that with real estate. If I go in to a $500,000 property that's a total fixer-upper and it's not on the market, I know it's worth $500,000. And the sellers are like, the roof's busted, everything's crappy here. I don't know, what do you want to offer? If I let them do a number, they could say, well, we were thinking 5, and then I got to negotiate around that because I could risk insulting them. I might go, 475, 460, right? If I go in and go, I don't know if I can get a 4 in the front of this. Now I've established that I might be talking as low as $400,000, get a reaction. Oh man, that's lower than we thought, but yeah, I mean, maybe we'd consider something like 425. Notice they try to pull you up from where your starting point is. Not always, obviously, but this is a very Trumpian strategy. That could be exactly what's happening here, is waiting to see who's going to crack first. This might be exactly why Mitch McConnell is dead silent. Speaking of dead, make sure to get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes via the link down below and get 4 free stocks with Webull when you deposit $100. Links are down below, and folks, we'll see you in the next video. Merry Christmas.